What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Wing and Tail Boys podcast, your Northeast hunting and fishing destination. I'm Chris.
And I'm Angelo.
And we're your hosts. Join us as we navigate the woods and waters of the Northeast, sharing our passion for the outdoors.
Whether it's land management, outdoor recreation, hunting, or fishing, we're going to cover it all. With 40 plus years of experience in the Northeast, we'll provide insights, tips, and stories to help you make the most of your adventures and help you experience the wild.
So, tune in, grab your gear, and let's hit the woods together. And always remember, success is just a commitment away. What's going on, guys? Thanks for joining us here for another episode of the Wing and Tail Boys. On today's episode, we are jumping into the next installment of our Arrow Science series. We're joined again by Dorge of Fire Not Today. How you doing, Dorge?
I'm doing quite okay.
Awesome. And we're today, our goal is to start talking about the most important component when it comes to building an arrow. And some of you might be thinking, hey, that's got to be the insert, or it's got to be the vanes. The vanes control the arrows. No, it's got to be the broadhead. The truth is, the first component, the base component that everything is built off of, is in fact the arrow. And
right, the shaft.
Exactly, the arrow shaft. And I'm blown away because I'm learning about all these different sizes of arrows that I didn't even know existed in the first place. So
Me too.
I'm sure that the listeners are going to feel the same way. Hopefully we open their eyes to something maybe that they haven't heard or seen before. So today we're going to be talking about, I think we're going to get to about half of the sizes. And what we want to try to focus on specifically is discussing the different diameter arrow shafts, where they came from, what the, how do I put it? Essentially how they each behave naturally on the shot, and what is required for you to gain control of that arrow from release to impact.
I'm going to talk about cost and benefit of each size and the component around it. The reason for that, because just because you pick a size, you are limiting yourself, you restrain yourself to a certain condition. And first of all, I want to mention there's a lot of off-the-scope components out there. When I say off-the-scope, that means it's not ATA standard, but it's going that way. Just like the bow, nowadays, a lot of ARS don't use the burger hole. A lot of sites don't use the 10, 24 screws. Things are progressing towards that. So does arrow components.
And is that making it... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You make it a lot more difficult. But at the same time, just like everybody else, no, the moment as we progress with technology and situation, some direction is a must, but some of them are actually gimmicks.
Yeah, snake oil, if you will, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, but some people like snake oil. I mean, like the Chinese like snake oil with alcohol.
Yeah, really? Learn something new every day.
I remember when I was a kid, that was called the green snake and the black snake. The green snake is the three color of green snake inside alcohol. The color of black snake alcohol is like cobra plus whatever, 3 different snake in a freaking jar for 5 years. Then you drink those.
Really? So it's alcohol made from the snake oil rather than from
you just throw the whole snake in it.
Oh my! Oh, so it's like a worm in tequila.
Yes, but the whole snake.
Oh my God! I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know how I feel about that.
In culture, I mean, just like when I first look at the tequila worm, I think, oh. Then I think about all the time I was eating the water cockroach in spice rice. I mean, it's just what you think. Or going to South Africa, we eat potato chips. They eat the ginormous tree worm.
Yeah, I guess you're not wrong. Different countries have chocolate covered crickets and whatever the case may be. But
one of the best one, the tomato paste based ants.
Yeah, I've never heard of that either.
America. I even bought one. I even bought one. You know what? It tastes like sand with ketchup.
Oh my goodness! It sounds like hummus. And
I
am not a hummus fan. All right, so
my daughter would disagree with you big time.
Yeah, so would my wife, but I love chickpeas. I love chickpeas, but I don't like hummus. I hate tomatoes, but I love tomato sauce. I love ketchup. I'm ass backwards half the time, but that's okay.
I know of people who went to Mexican restaurants, refused to eat anything with tomato, end up with fried chicken wings in an authentic Mexican restaurant.
I will be honest though, I love a good chicken nugget.
All right, let's go in it.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, let's start with the common arrow size. Let's be frank. What is the standard quote unquote arrow size?
Are you looking for me to answer or because
Yes, I'm looking for an answer.
the standard? So from a hunter standpoint, if you were to ask a hunter, I would venture to guess that they would say a 166 or a 204 because that's realistically what you see a lot in the hunting industry these days. But I believe that the standard arrow is considered a 246, isn't it?
Yes and no.
Okay.
The first arrow make out of these is closer to 240. And it was the Beeman hunters. But they use outserts. So the shaft of the size of the diameter, OD and ID does not matter because you use an outsert on it.
And an outsert
That means you got a tube, you got a piece of aluminum go on top of the arrow in the front and top of the arrow in the back, and you put the nut into the outsert, you put the arrow tip into the outsert on both ends.
So there's nothing that goes on the inside of the arrow to hold it in place at all, or?
On the Beeman, they finally decided to put a nut inside the arrows.
Gotcha.
So a Beeman arrow on the first generation finally become a nut on the back and the outsert in the front.
Okay. So before we get into talking about the 246, since it's considered the standard arrow, there had to have been a reason for that. What's the reason behind the 246 becoming the standard, number one? And number two, is that across the board aluminum, carbon fiber, fiberglass, or are we talking only carbon arrow standard?
See, back then when 246 first come out, I would say it was closer to the 1990s. It's not that long ago. It's only about 35 years ago. The reason for that, because the original, when the Beeman comes out, it was pretty decent, but the outsert is not concentric. And the broadhead is not great. I didn't even know that until I was 7 years into hunting. I was wondering how come my arrow never fly the same with viewpoint and broadheads, because the entire thing is like all whacked out.
Okay. And concentric, just for the listeners quickly, concentric means that everything is centered. All of your components are perfectly in the middle of your arrow shaft. Your field point threads go through the dead center of your shaft. Your nocks, everything is completely centered. That's the concept of concentricity.
That means when you spin the arrow correctly, the arrow will spin reasonable with no wobble.
Okay.
So when Gold Tip, which is Marvin Carlson, is the guy who started it, and he made Gold Tip. Before that, the only carbon arrow that was out there is Beeman. Beeman is an extruded shaft, so the carbon fiber are all straight. When you nick the arrow, it explode and it burst. So the size of that Beeman is closer to 240, 220 to 240. Okay, on ID. So it's a pretty special size. And then when Gold Tip come with a 246, it becomes so-called standard arrow for a very long time. I mean, if today you go to Walmart, you look at the biggest amount of arrow, they're all technically 244.
But they're in the class of 246.
Correct. The reason that, because 246 is a SAE. And when Carbon Express or the rest of Eastern, when they make that, the conversion will become 244. And then when people cover around, you'll find out that in case of Black Eagle, it's more like a 245. And in case of Carbon Force, that's original made by PSE, is 243. And the worst case is that Beeman, which is the old Beeman people started a new company called Carbon Impact. That's the 242.
I want to ask you a question so bad, but I know we're going to get to it later. I just, how the heck, if an arrow is a 246 and then they could be 240, 242, 244, 246, 248, how in the world do you get components to fit?
That's the reason every arrow you buy that factory's component, technically that component only. That is a way that you don't get out, you don't buy anything, you buy an arrow shaft from me, you lost something, you buy from me, end of story.
Yes.
It's the same thing. I mean, if you look at the previous French, economy, the aerospace, the car, and the high-speed trail. All the screws are the same size. The pitch is different. Why? So that they don't cross from one industry to the other. So everybody got their limited supply chain.
Okay.
That means if you buy, quote unquote, a gold tip, you try to fit it with the, say, an Eastern SNAC or carbon extract, you'll fall out.
I mean, I think,
and you try to.
I feel like anyone, I've had this issue specifically with field points where I go to screw them in, they'll screw into one insert, they won't screw into another.
No, that's a
more
different story.
importantly, I've seen it on the Knox.
Yes, Knox, definitely. But the insert is wrong because, see, all the insert and field point and so on are actually have called the old gauge is called AMO standard, now become the ATA standard, which is the X32. And then you're supposed to thread in close to 10.75 millimeter on the shank, and then no less than 10.75 millimeter on the threads, and so on. The original archery specification is very loose. We're talking 15 thousandths on all tolerance or more.
And 15 thousandths is pretty big when we're talking about the speeds we're talking about and the
now
the
you know why
tolerances
everything don't work right.
Yeah. Okay.
Because when you have remember, when you put a field point into an insert into a carbon, you're stuck in two tolerance already.
Right. And if everything has a tolerance of 15 thousandths and you have 10 different components on your arrow, then you could be within.
You don't have that many.
No, I'm just making the point. For every component you add to your arrow, the tolerances compound each other. Is essentially what I'm getting at. Okay.
We go back to chemistry. Your significant figures.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So sorry, but went off on a tangent. So the 246, the first people to really make it were the Beemans with the Beeman Hunters. They were at more of like a 242-ish. Then
240-ish. Okay. Because they always use an outsert.
Gotcha. Then not Carbon Express. Gold Tip came out with their 246. And at that point, the 246 became the standard.
Yeah, because everybody found out that it's actually the reason the 246 is the standard because it's very easy to make. Okay. It is one of the best size for the moment the carbon fiber cutting and so on. Remember, the whole idea of a carbon fiber is cheap. Nothing was good because it's cheap, it's more durable, it doesn't have as much memory effect as aluminum. It doesn't have fatigue. But then just remember, because it's made of carbon, do not mean it doesn't have memory. Do not mean that remember, carbon fiber modulus is extremely high. But the resin is not. And what holds carbon fiber together? The resin.
So it's like the weakest link in a chain type of deal.
Correct, but see, compared to as you increase the wall thickness, the modulus of the carbon fiber become less important. Because carbon fiber, although have fantastic modulus, it do not have as good as a ductility as aluminum or metal.
So the fatter the wall, the more durable the arrow.
You got it. The higher of course, remember we are talking 1990s now. Now we're in 2025. The resin material is significantly better. It's not 2-3 times better. We're talking 50 times better.
Wow, that's a big jump. I mean, but then so again, 35 years you expect it to. 35 years it's a long time for science. Is really what it comes down to.
Not just that. Unfortunately, not many people put the effort to really learn the chemistry. I would be surprised that we should have much better stuff by now. I mean, it's like every few years when I saw something happen, it takes 4 years for the industry to catch up. Just like, I introduced titanium in 2011. 2025. This is the first year I got a lot more call for titanium.
Were you the first? Were you one of the first or the first people in like the hunting space to bring titanium into?
Yep, I am.
That's awesome.
That's a matter. I'm the first one who actually filed a patent. But then the USPTO do not understand what I'm filing, so I was rejected. But I then turn around and file for a lot of things. The utilization in specific environment for titanium, like axles, camshaft, that kind of deal. I did all those.
So are you, I know we're going down a tangent. The last question, are you the only person who makes the titanium kits for bows?
And so far I'm there because I have a database. And remember, I'm also a DBA.
Yeah. Well,
So
we worked closely together last year. I mean, I sent you my bow and my darton, and you were able to take the measurements and the specs and make those parts for the dartons moving forward. So I'm glad we were able to
No, it's not
get together
that
for
I
that.
did not make the parts. Those are sent to SAE parts. So far, a Darton bow do not, like most of the bow do not have specialty parts. This year, I mean, that I would say from 2009 to now, the one with the most specialty parts are usually Bowtech.
Yeah. I don't even, what I meant by special, I meant like the specific measurements of the individual
those
parts.
are all day. I just wrote them, so a database. When I wrote inside a web app, I use Python, the whole thing. I run my SQL database on the back end, and bam, you got it.
That's awesome. Okay, back to 246. So it became the standard, and it became the standard because of how easy it was to make, how efficiently they can make it, and was it also consistent at the time from arrow to arrow?
No, because see, we also had to follow the ATA with AMO become the ATA standard. With that standard, the most obvious is that the 246 is simply ideal based on the technology of the time, based on what we know, because see, think about it. If we really follow directly onto aluminum, the size that we'll be making will be the Gold Tip 300. But then it's less durable.
Right.
Because the wall is thinner. Mm-hmm. And it's carbon. The thinner the wall, the less durability it is.
Right.
So they increase the wall thickness, which become the 246. At the same time, Eastern come with all the rest of the sizes, which we will not talk about today, the ACCs, which is your 205, your 215, your 235, and so on.
So back up for just 1 second. I don't know if I heard you correctly. So the 300, the 246 was birthed because the 300 needed thicker walls, so they just made the walls fatter and came up with the 246?
Yes.
That's awesome.
And then if there's two things that you don't get the durability, at least that is my understanding. I can't take credit for what people's thinking process is, but I can see what the market, because at that time, I'm no different than most average hunter. I say, oh, wait, look at this. This is available. The price is good.
The price is right.
Right. But you know, the funniest thing, I'll share a funny thing with you. And when they come up with the gold tip hunters, they only have one arrow to sell. That's the only one they make. Mm-hmm. And some marketing genius say, hey, that's the only one you make money from them. Right? Mm-hmm. So why not make it different? So that's reason strictness factor kicked in.
Yeah. And wasn't it, at the time, was it actually done? I'm trying to remember back to something I've heard you talk about in the past, and I don't know if I might be getting two different things mixed up, but is that basically they just weighed a bunch of different arrows and said, okay, this batch is this weight, it goes here, and this batch is this, it goes here? Or did they actually measure the straightness of the arrows?
No, actually, they got a machine, which is a pretty straightforward machine. It was 28-inch apart. You put a laser in the middle. You rotate the arrow once. If the entire thing the deviation is less than 1,000, it's called 1,000 strictness, which becomes the pro hunter. Mm-hmm. If it's 3,000, it becomes a hunter. If it's 5,000, it's called the expedition. Anything over 7,000 is called expedition hunter. And the price is 160 all the way down to $60.
And don't they still have those? Don't they still have like their hunter pro? I don't know if they make expedition anymore, but I could have swore I've seen gold tip with their hunters still, right?
Of course they do. Because when they first make them, when gold tip themselves, because this is the information I got from Marvin, okay? I don't quote me absolutely. I do it based on memory and based on what he told me. He said that when they first make it, maybe every 100 dozen they make, every 100 pieces they make, they may got 12 to 15 on the 1,000s. Huh. And majority of the chunks are 3,000s.
Wow.
and some of them are 5 and some are 9. But then when gold tip in its best part, everything they make is closer to 70 to 80% in the 1000s.
So when they were making these in the beginning, before they decided, hey, let's split them up into 3 different arrows, were they selling all of them from one thousandth to 700,000ths, or were they only selling the 100s?
They are just selling whatever there is.
Goodness.
Because see, until that comes up, why is strictness such a big factor?
I mean,
no, let me ask you one question. Why is strictness such an important factor? Explain to me scientifically.
Scientifically speaking, things that are straighter waste less energy going down range, or at least that's how I believe it. Right?
Okay, let me ask you one question. When you shoot an arrow, what happened to the arrow?
Oh, the arrow flexes.
Okay, when the arrow flexes, when you fly in the air, how much arrow flexes?
I'm cheating here a little bit, but I believe it flexes 12 inches in either direction, right?
No, it flexes 50 to 150,000 initially.
Okay. Off the launch, you're saying?
No, after you fly through and it finished settling and it was doing this.
Oh, so you're saying after the arrow's recovered, it's still flexing to, what'd you say, 50 to 100 thousandths?
Correct. So, you mean to tell me when you launch the arrow, that 5,000 in the front at 20 yards will make any difference when the arrow is flexing 50 to 100,000?
No, I mean, I'm sure you could get someone that would say, yeah, but it's now that's 100 thousandths more, you know, and
yeah, I'm not 5,000. You saw 100,000, 105,000. Okay. How big is your broadhead? How big is your fuel point? You mean to tell me when you miss the target? I mean, they say, yes, the launch angle is different. But if you do not even match the spine, and your arrow is flexing, say, from your 4 o'clock to 10 o'clock position, that will be more important, your 1,000s?
No, I don't think so. I think, I mean, it's kind of a cheating answer question, because we have had this part of the conversation before, and you know, full disclosure, I'm not shooting Aero Concept because Dorge and I linked up. Dorge and I are linked up because I first shot Aero Concept, and I loved it so much that I wanted to learn about why it works the way it does. So that's, you know, I don't know if I've touched on it before. Again, you know, we're 5-6 weeks into this series now, so I may have forgotten if we mentioned it in the first, but that's basically how this whole thing came to be.
And then on top of that, you know why 246 was such a initial big deal? Because it's the easiest and cheapest to make.
Yeah, I mean, like anything in this world, you know, they're birthed from expense or ease, right? I mean, if everything is working great and it doesn't cost a lot of money to make, then why change it and make something new? You know what I mean? So I get it.
Because remember, we're also dealing with back then the fuel point is still X32 fuel points. And we also have the neck, which is supposed to be 5.55 millimeter on the shank with the chamfer on both sides. When you really look at that size, the thing that is easier to make is a 246 because all things will fit.
I got you.
Because if you look at 2219, you are technically looking at 9 millimeter fuel point. When you look at 246, it's an 8 millimeter. Can you get away with 9 millimeter? Answer is yes. So everything will still work, and that's percent. Can you imagine you shoot a 202? Every time you shoot a target, you won't be able to remove anything from it.
Yeah, I mean, even with that, you know, 1 millimeter, if you're supposed to be shooting an 8 millimeter and you shoot a 9 millimeter, now you're talking about half a millimeter on, you know, a half millimeter ring around. Now, in my experience, the only problem that causes is trying to pull your damn arrows out of certain targets.
Exactly.
I've had that issue before.
Become hell.
Exactly. So then, I was gonna unless you have something else that you want to add to it, I wanted to get into the pros and cons of the 246. Like, what is great about them? What's not so great about them?
First of all, 246, there's nothing wrong with it. That's so great about it. 246 is a size you can do all kind of material with it. And you can make all kind of components that's reasonably good with it. Remember, that was one critical part. A lot of people forget the AMO and the ATA standard. Every component going to arrow, except the knock, has to be hollowed. That means every component you put in it, in other words, besides the fuel point, the broadhead, and the knock, everything inside needs to be hollowed.
Why is that? Why is it so important for it to be hollow?
Because of the gluing process. But things change as the time goes on. We start with the SP series insert from Eastern that is solid. The new HIT series is not hot, is solid on the backside. All the other so-called half-oil components are solid.
Doesn't that create a pressure pocket inside the arrow? Like
Absolutely.
And does that cause any problems with the flight or the durability?
It really do not. But at the same time, it really degraded the ability of an insert to glue correctly. Because if you use super glue gel and you put the insert into the shaft, you stick enough moisture or whatever inert gas that the glue need to cure. If the bag is solid.
Probably not, because it can't breathe.
And remember, just for thinking process, the thinner the arrow, the less those moisture is.
Really?
The thinner the arrow, how much more air you got in
it? Duh. The ID. I got you. I was thinking, when you said thinner, I was thinking wall thickness, not...
No, the thinner
not
the diameter of the shaft.
I got you.
But then 246, it's not 246 just because it's 244 in the ID. One of the best example, let's pick a single company, Carbon Express. If you pick a piece of Carbon Express Bruce Quick Select, and then pick a piece of Carbon Express pile driver, and you look at the wall thickness and then measure the weight, it's close to 30% difference. 30.
Is there a reason for that? Well, the pile driver, I've actually never heard of it before, so I'm just spitballing here.
The pile driver is a super heavy fiberglass content arrow on a 246.
I got you. I figured by the name of it, it makes sense. If you're anything like me, you love to customize your bow while always making sure everything is just spot on. That's why I trust Anthony and Chris over at Big D Custom Pro Shop. They're located on Route 15 in Lake Hopatcong, New Jersey, and they have everything you need to tune your bow. And I promise you're going to leave there with a smile on your face. So, if you live in northern New Jersey, give my boy Big D a shout for all your archery needs. Also in northern New Jersey, Andover Hunt and Fish is your destination for all your outdoor and shooting needs. Located on Route 206 in Andover, New Jersey, they have everything you need for hunting, fishing, camping, gun exchanges, and more. Gerald, the owner, has been very good to us with his support for our channel, and we have no doubts that you'll have the same experience. Head on over to Andover Hunt and Fish today and let them know the Wing and Tail Boys sent you. When I head out to the woods, I have to know that I have the best performing equipment that I can afford, so that way I'm the only variable that I have to worry about. That's why I trust Fire Knock products for all my arrow and bow accessory needs. From arrow components to bow accessories like stabilizers and arrow rests, they have what you need. Dorge won't put anything on the market if it doesn't perform 50% better than what's already out there. So head on over to fireknock.com today to see what they're all about.
So they put a lot of material, so you got a super heavy arrow shaft. And of course, the thickness of the shaft is significant. While when you look at the Blue Squig Select, it's an ultra, I believe it's a 32 million module carbon, so that it is extremely, extremely stiff on reaction. So you can use less material, which make the shaft super lightweight. Which also make it extremely not durable.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way. We talked on that, not too long ago. There was a time where I was trying to go for heavy FOC, super, not obviously you can't. I don't know that you could go with a crazy light arrow with a super FOC. I'm sure you can.
You can, but
I feel like it's not
what's your
safe.
intention?
Right. So I was trying to go for medium heavy, high FOC. I ended up with a 560 grain arrow, which isn't ridiculously heavy, but my arrows were just breaking. They were breaking at the knock end. They were breaking at the front end. It was just, maybe I didn't have the right grains per inch for the arrow I was trying to build. Honestly, this is before I started diving into true arrow building. And it was actually the issues in that arrow that led me to fire knock in the first place. So it's kind of, that kind of comes full circle. Again, we're not trying to sell anyone on anything here. We're just trying to give everybody education. But I need to speak on what I know, basically.
Yep. See, the 246, because the component, because of the AMO standard, which is X32 threads, you have all the inserts and the knocks. See, that's another thing. You know why back then, Eastern make the unit bushing for all the arrows? Why can't they just make that for every size?
Would it be so they could make one thing for all arrows? Would it just be?
They can make the bushings. Because making bushing in CNC using screw machine is cheap. Back in the end of 1980s, to get a knot mold in today's money is closer to $150,000
for one mold. Which would have, in their case, a lot of pockets per mold. In your case, one pocket per mold.
Right, because then imagine per space, maybe closer to 150 grand. So you look at maybe 300 grand in today's money. So, because knot molding back in the 1980s to 90s is ridiculously expensive.
I mean,
that's the reason you make one knock. Just like all the Eastern in the old days, aluminum, they make a cone and then use a Mako knock.
Okay.
And then later they figured that they prefer a knock that goes inside. But since they remember 2219 and 2216 is 6,000 difference in ID. Remember, 22 means 2264, 19 means 19,000. So 2264 minus 38,000 is the ID.
So the reason they made the bushings is so that way they can make one knock, done, and then just fit it to basically they made the knock to fit the smallest arrow, I would imagine, and then the bushings to fit all the.
They use the G knock,
and then they use the bushings to fit all of the big.
All right, they make the bushing so the inside is always 166, and the OD is whatever that is.
Gotcha. So
it's a smart approach because at the time the knot molds are so expensive. I mean, like my knot molds are. I mean, when I saw it in 2006, my knot mold is still 60 grand. I mean, you can buy it for 7 grand today, but you need to understand when you're dealing with a mold. Since we're talking components, we need to talk about the mold. Just like when you do, if you do computers, you do Ethernet. The connector, that mold for that, if you pay actually less than 200 grand, you're not getting quality equipment.
Because it needs to be perfect. It needs to be perfect.
All right. Perfect consistency and cycle abilities. My molds are 5 million plus.
Dollars?
5 million cycles.
Oh, I was gonna say
like that.
So what is it? My
molds are 60 grand.
So 5 million cycles before the mold isn't usable anymore?
No, the mold, you need to modify the mold.
Okay.
But then when you see, very simple. If you are really into precision, when you have 4 cavities, how do you guarantee all the same?
Oh, you can't. You can't.
How do you guarantee the flow? Remember, when you're dealing with polycarbonate, we're talking components. Because until you understand components from 246 point of view, all the rest become ridiculous. Right. When you flow, say you do a 4 cavity, or in the case of like knocked out, that's 22 cavities.
Yeah. And
you inject them at one point, it starts spreading. And then polycarbonate, translucent polycarbonate, is semi-soft and cure from the outside in. So when you inject it, the first few mold in the front will fill. They start to cure, right? But the plastic is still flowing. But to the very end, now you got to say you got 4. How do you guarantee that 4 with the same identical material, with the same flowing structure, and then finally the knot is formed? How do you guarantee the curing process, the flow process, the material are 100% identical?
You can't. I mean, just from
Exactly.
a basic standpoint, the farther something has to travel, the more time it has to either cool or heat up, depending on the application, to dry or whatever. So I would imagine that the farther away from the point of injection, the less consistent that knock would be, or whatever it is you're
It's not
making.
matter consistent. It's matter of they are different.
Mm.
That means that when you click, remember the plastic nut have one critical factor that nothing we use in archery had.
What's that?
You clip onto the string.
Yes.
That means there's elasticity in it. There's modulus in it.
You need it to hold. You need it to hold enough that it won't fall, but open.
Open and let go. How do you guarantee that process to be the same?
You can't. I would imagine that you can't.
You technically cannot. Now, let's go one step further. You know, when you get the mold, you also got the sticks, right?
Yeah.
Because you inject the plastic, and then when open, you see the stick got cut. Then you got the stick with all the knocks on it.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened to that stick?
Or you got to cut it off or break it off or something.
They just cut it off, grind it, and throw it back in.
Throw it back in?
Yes, to regrind.
Oh, my goodness.
Now you know why.
It's already cured. It's already been cured. So they're curing, uncuring, curing, uncuring. Okay, I see the problem.
Now you know when you look at some of the knocks, you see some black dots in it because during the curing process, regrind, you introduce dust. Can you absolutely guarantee there's no bubbles? Now you know why we at Fine Art use virgin flow. All the stuff they went through, we throw. So we can at least guarantee the material that go into it in the melting process, in the curing process, that whole environment is controlled, which the knock throat of holding is the same.
So just to put what Dorge is talking about here is I used to dabble in model cars when I was younger, but I found out real quickly I didn't have the patience to sit there and glue them all together and paint it. I never finished one ever. But one of my favorite things to do was when you opened up the box, all of the parts for the model car came, like what you're saying, from a mold, and each piece was connected by one thin like rod of plastic. And that's what you're saying. They would cut off and just throw back into the bin.
No, they grind it first and then throw it back.
Right,
that's what's called regrind.
Yeah, and then essentially I don't know if they actually physically melt it down, but whatever
you
the
went
process
through injection melting because of the pool. You built back to the pool and then went through the flow process.
Yeah. So I mean, just it's like a more precise version of recycling. Right?
Yes.
You use something, you recycle it, you use it again, you recycle it, but every time you do that, you have to add more to it because stuff has been used. I see the problem. I see the problem.
Just like when I remember the conversation with Tim Gillingham about Go Tip. He told me when he go there, he makes sure that all the knocks that he got from the company from mold 1.
Okay.
Cavity 1.
All right. And they have do they have them labeled? Does the company know which ones are coming out of?
You know, I'm the only one who put cavity labels on my nuts.
Well,
but then I found out that it was not a good idea.
If you only have one cavity, though, it's pretty easy.
The original S-Nut have 2 cavities.
Okay.
Then I found out that was not a good idea because I learned there is difference. Do those people care about the difference? They don't even know how to spine an arrow. You tell them about the micro difference on the holding of a knot to a string. And for most people, they don't even know what the string size fit is.
Yeah.
So when you start talking about those until you understand the importance of those,
right,
you have no idea what I'm talking about.
Right. And I mean, it's the same thing. Like the nuance that we're talking about here, ladies and gentlemen, is the same thing as anybody the difference between someone who grew up with their father shooting Remington and said, nope, I'm shooting Remington core lock. That's all my father shot. That's what I'm shooting. And you go to the range and you're accurate versus the guy who says, okay, I'm going to buy core locked in 2 different grains. I'm going to buy Hornady in 2 different grains. I'm going to buy this in 2 different grains. And I'm going to go to the range and I'm going to shoot each and every one and see which one groups the best. That's the difference we're talking about here. Right?
Not just that, because different grains don't mean anything. You need to look at lot piles. Because different time, different moisture, different capability, you end up with different too.
And that's the exact reason why I want to start reloading my own. Now you see, this is the problem. I went down the rabbit hole. I learned all of this stuff for arrows, and now I feel like I have to apply it to my rifle also. And then after the rifle, I'm sure it'll be something
do the
else.
reverse. See, when I was in Bloomington, Indiana, I with all my friends, because in Indiana you don't need all the like 40 cars in Illinois. I was into guns, and all my buddies show me how to reload and everything. I just do it for them because if I want to shoot, I'm not paying that kind of money. When I shoot 9 mils, I'm going to just reload. Oh my gosh! I mean the weights, the dies, and so on. That make your head spin. But
the only thing I have to worry about is 308. The only thing I want to reload right now is 308.
Yeah, but remember, we're talking guys who I'm talking a guy who got class 4 license. He got a freaking Gatling gun in the middle of his set.
That's amazing.
And a rocket launcher.
Oh my! To be an American, right?
Yeah, you should see his safe. When I go to his house, he got a 2 single bedroom. His whole basement, the door is a freaking gigantic safe.
That's amazing. I love that.
I got 12-inch of concrete all the way around, including the top. I say, what happened there? I say, oh, I got curved ventilations, so you can't come in, even your clients.
That's amazing. Well, I mean, hey, listen, a little bit of a side story. When I grew up around firearms. Like my dad had them from the day I was born. He started hunting, I think, the year before I was born, 1990. I was born 91. He started hunting 90. And my whole life, till this day, Dorge, I'm 34. I'm going to be 34 years old this year. We've never had the combination to my dad's safe. And anytime we needed a gun, he would go and get it for us. Until this day, we were taught, if you're using a firearm to go hunting, to go shooting, to do anything that is legal and safe, it is not a weapon. And I know it's a small little nuance, but to me, a weapon is something that you want to use to inflict harm to somebody, right? Where what we're doing is more of a shooting sport. You're shooting firearms, but that's a little tangent. So anyway, back to the 246. If I asked you what the issues were with 246, and we said that there really aren't any. So if there's nothing wrong with a 246, why do these other arrows exist?
Because the 246 never died. And there's other companies who sell 246. And Eastern don't have anything to sell that's different.
So it wasn't from a performance standpoint. It wasn't a thing with performance. It was more along the lines of,
but they claim it is performance.
Right. We need something to sell. This is new. Try it out.
And we are the only one who got it.
Well, you mean Americans? Or
anybody? Because Eastern instantly patented the HIT systems.
And what exactly does the HIT system? What is that? I know it's an acronym.
Remember, you still want to follow the AMO standard.
I'm sorry.
You still want to follow the AMO standard.
Gotcha.
You want to fit the 202, 204 shank of the fuel point into something else. So that's the reason the Eastern 204. Is the shank of the fuel points, and they put a HIT system to hold where the shank can be screwed.
Okay, so they're really just building at this time, right? Going 204, 300, 246. They're basically building different size arrows around the components that already exist.
Otherwise, nobody want to buy it
at this time. All right.
Of course, things have changed. But let's go back to 246. 246 is really all around very durable, everybody happy shaft.
And relatively affordable?
It is cheap. And you see, originally, I believe that somebody, I don't know whether ATA or Eastern did, is that they allowed an arrow to have excise tax on it.
I'm sorry, what? A tax? Like?
Yes. What? Every archery component in America, the sight, anything touchable, is subject to 11% tax on the first transaction.
Why?
Because that's how it works. If you buy fishing tackle, if you buy, say, a box from Plano for fishing tackle, that box is subject to 11% excise tax.
From
If
the
you buy manufacturer,
on the consumer side or the manufacturer side?
hey, somebody had to pay for it.
So you're both. The answer is both.
Yes. Now, very simple. If you say you buy a plain old box on the fishing tackle side, it's average about 15% more expensive than you buy the same box in the sewing section, because that box is subject to the excise tax of fishing.
That's unbelievable.
Now, for example, you buy a sight for $100 as a retail, and you buy from the manufacturer. The manufacturer have to pay 11% of the first sale as tax to that site. So I'm assuming this: you make the sight for $50, you sell it online to a customer for $100. At the first quarter of that sale, you pay the U.S. government $11. So before anything, that's only $39 of margin you can play with.
They got to get their money somewhere.
Now,
oh man,
every year, the U.S. government and the archery, whatever people, like this year, every single shop, regardless of cost, is 62 cents per shop.
You mean tax-wise?
Yes. That means if you buy a dozen arrow, just say 60 cents to make it easy.
Mm-hmm.
That's $7.20 per dozen arrow, regardless of cost, will pay to the U.S. government.
I never knew that. I knew that's on top of sales tax, like normal sales tax?
No, this is to pay. For example, if I am a manufacturer, I have a dozen arrow I pay $10 for. When I make my first sale, I need to instantly pay the U.S. government $7.20 minimum for that dozen arrow, regardless how much money I make.
So that's crazy.
No, that's not crazy. That is what I mean. If you want, you can look at that. Go to IRS or U.S. Treasury under excise tax. I'll tell you exact number because I just finished my excise tax.
When I say crazy, I don't mean like, I get it. When I say crazy, it's because this is going to get us off on a whole nother tangent that we should probably avoid. But I have a problem with government having their hand in everything. And we'll leave it at that. Because that drives me crazy.
As of 2000, as the last version, which is based on June 2024, each arrow shaft is subject to 62 cents per shaft. Bow, quiver, broadhead, and points are subject to 11%. The tackle box is subject to 3%. Electric outboard for 3%. Fishing rod and post is subject to 10%. Any fishing rod equipment besides fishing rod is 10%. Indoor tanning surface is 10% of paying amount.
Oh my goodness.
So when you tell people you just bought a dozen arrow for $30, you need to ask yourself this question. Regardless of price, the U.S. government will take, let me give you the numbers, on $7.44 over anything. That means if you sell the arrow for $3, you still own the government $7.44.
That's on the foot. That's per dozen.
Yes, it's 62 cents per shaft. So, if you sell the arrow for say $3, and it costs you $1.50 to make it, before you have the damn thing to do with it, it's $2.12.
But okay, now I'm seeing it. From as a consumer, obviously we know it costs money for people to make things. But until you're the one making it, or you talk to someone who's making it, or you get the information, I feel like you don't really see it. You don't really understand why things are so expensive. So that's
think about it.
It's great to hear that, because it gives some kind of context to stuff, and it helps people understand that people aren't charging what they're charging for no reason. It's because they have to make a living too.
Remember, that's before anything. Now, I saw a funny fact. Because I'm a CPA, I got my CSA, I read the tax law. Now you know why not. But see, you heard the taxes on quiver, bow, arrow rest, and any bow-related components is 11%, including fuel points and broadheads. The shaft alone is 62 cents per shaft.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to the inserts?
11%.
No, it's out of excise.
I'm sorry?
It's out of excise. It's free.
Okay.
So guess what finite make initially? The knot
and the inserts.
The vein.
So you just avoided all the taxes.
Until I make my first broadhead and arrow rest.
I got you. Okay.
And of course, I make shaft now. I have no choice.
Right. Which, I mean, I'm glad you do. We'll leave it at that for now because we're gonna get into that.
Let's go back to 246.
Okay. Yeah.
The reason we want to talk about cost, because all this, the 246 will be so common because of cost.
Mm-hmm.
The supply chain for the cost, the manufacturing process for the entire process. But then at the same time, we already talk about 246 being all different sizes, isn't it? 246 is not standard. It's not 246. It's 244 to 242 to 246. That's your size.
My goodness.
Now ask yourself this question: if you're an aftermarket component maker like myself, what's the size you make?
243 or 244. Well, for like, if you're trying to make it to fit everything, you make it right in the middle and adjust as you need to.
That's where you're wrong.
Okay.
If you make it 244, how the hell you fit 243 or 242?
Well,
it's in the middle.
You don't.
You can't.
Unless you sand the inside of the
yes,
shaft.
But you sand, how do you make sure it's good?
I don't know.
You can't. Now, to make things even worse, remember we talked about the Carbon Express power driver and Blue Streak? What's the wall thickness?
I don't know.
It is going to be about 2/3 the difference. So when you make an insert with the lip, what size do you make it?
You don't know. Which is why you make the parts for you make the components for the arrows you make, and you
when you're aftermarket manufacturer like myself,
mm-hmm.
you now have patent out of the wazoo because you now got every single size. It's not one size; it's a range.
On your website, it literally says use this for a 240, use this for a 242, and I could be getting this mixed up with something else, but I think under there you even say this is for a 242 this is for a 242 ID, and these are the arrows that it'll fit, and you list the arrows that your specific components will fit in.
Yes, especially see with a 246 you can play because it's big enough. The slot percentage is low. That's the reason we don't want to talk about 202 or 166 class yet. Remember, I say class. It did not say 204 or 166 because they are not exactly one number.
Right, because the class includes the 242 to 246 or 240 to 247.
No. Because like 246 is 242 to 246.5. And then the class of 204 start with 201 all the way to 207.
Unbelievable.
And the class of 166 is 1650 to 1665.
That's insane. But that's now, again
but that's as a manufacturer who make components. Premium components. And you have to fit nearly everybody. And then when some people make things super small, like carbon impact, that's a 242. The insert's gonna have problems. So there's only two ways. One, you state it don't fit. Mm-hmm. Or you make with the smallest and you go up. And when you do the smallest, you go up, like you make it for 242 and you fit 246. What does that mean? You have 4,000 of play in it.
There's going to be a lot of
2,000 each side.
Two on each side. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that. I've felt it. Building arrows in the past, you go to put an insert in, it rocks inside the shaft. So you take that insert out, and you try to fit it throughout the different shafts to see which one it lines up with better.
But see, theoretically, all the mandrels for the shaft, like nearly all arrows besides Eastern and Gear Crossing, all the shaft based on mandrels. So if you buy from the same manufacturer, the ID is the only thing you know is consistent. The OD is not.
Right. But do we care so
We're
much
talking
about the
246,
OD?
okay? The OD is based on the thickness of the material. The ID is always the mandrel. So it's the only thing you know is absolutely consistent.
Right. Well,
But
that
then
makes
mandrel
sense.
worn out. Don't get me wrong, mandrel will worn out. Mandrel is based on hydraulic pull the thing out of it.
Yeah.
And when they do that, eventually the mandrel will go from 246 all the way to 245. That's where you call it the quits.
Okay. So sidebar question real quick. Let's say, and this is just popped in my head. Let's say someone's using a mandrel, they're making a bunch of arrows, and then in the middle of making a batch, that mandrel breaks. Do they
They
scrap?
destroy it.
Do they scrap
Destroy the mandrel.
Do they scrap the batch though, and be like
No,
thinking
scrap the
that?
mandrel. Remember, the mandrel is in the shaft after baking. After you finish, next reason, like me, when I make the 246, I make 500 mandrels.
Wow.
Because every arrow have their mandrel in it. When you went through the picking process, cured, then come back, then you pull. Every one of them.
So you make 500. You make 500 shafts at a time per size.
In some places, yes. In some cases, up to a few thousand. Like in case of Carbon Express, that's like 5,000 to 10,000.
That's cool. And they're really
remember,
them out like that.
You went through the wrapping process, then you went through the baking process, then you went through the cooling process and the pooling process. If you make 5,000 each, you need 20,000.
Yeah. That's insane. But then again, when you think about it, I mean, you're talking about something that's like that thin. It's not like you need a ridiculous amount of space, relatively speaking.
That's the reason when you look at Eastern process, Eastern think because they are a process, their company think manufacturing. I mean, that's part reason you can't. Most company will never compete with Eastern because they will spend millions into making their machines. It's like the extrusion machine. You just simply go, and then if you want a 1,000 feet long 246 or say an axis, they can make it.
They can make it. And I'll say that when I was shooting my high FOC arrows, you could say, there was the arrow that kept breaking on me. Again, I don't want to bash anyone. The next arrow I got was the Eastern Axis. They're whatever the 166 is. They have an axis that's a 166. I will be honest, outside of the issues that come with just about any 166 arrow, I loved that arrow. It was it was durable. I felt like they flew consistent from arrow to arrow. I felt like when I had my field points on, I was just target shooting, that they were hitting where I wanted them to, and the performance was great. So from my experience, I can't say anything negative about Easton. I can't.
Well, you haven't tested the field. When we reach that, I will tell you. Okay. So let's put it besides that.
Okay.
The 246, because the components are so simple, but then you see what my problem is. If I want to make a lighter knot to fit standard arrows, I technically make 5 of them.
Right. So that's the 242, 43, 44, 46,
242 minimum 3. Because you figure 1,000, you can fudge around with it.
Now, what about I don't know if you made them like this on purpose, or when you buy your specific. I'll speak on Fire Knock Knocks. When you buy Fire Knock Knocks, they have like shoulders on them, or like I forget exactly what you would call them, but other companies have had the same. And what I've done in the past is I've never had to do this with yours, but when I've used other knocks and put them, they didn't fit in the arrow. I've had to file the back or the shoulder of the knockdown just a little bit, or the shaft, to get it to fit. Are they designed for that to be done?
In some place, yes, because that's where my first pattern, or the final knock pattern, which I use in a lot of my knocks, is that in 90% of the time when people put a knock, which is a cylinder with 6 ribs, they're all 60 degrees apart. Which means that if you compress the plastic, you will get 1 to 2,000 max. Because you need to compress it, otherwise it fall out, right? So a 246, the knock should be 247.5 to push it.
Okay.
So what happens if the shaft is 244?
It doesn't fit.
That's the reason I'm playing with geometry now. I know you're a math teacher. You're going to love this.
Yeah.
Everybody is 60 degree apart because 6 of them 60 degree is 360.
360. Yeah.
So what happens if you design it to be 90 degree apart? Then you got 4, right?
But there's more play in the. There's more play between them.
Right. But why haven't you go with 100 degree? So when you put 100 degree of each rib going to a cylinder, what's going to guarantee to happen?
Well, you can't
It's no
go
longer
100.
round.
Well, you can't go
It's
100
no-
either because 360
100.
doesn't split to 100.
Exactly. And when they don't split 100, what phenomenon is going to happen? Ovalization.
Yeah. Of the
When
you're
you
saying
do
ovalization of the knock itself?
the nut cylinder, when you have ovalization, now you can cover margins. Now you know why the final will cover 244 to 246 because it's an ovalization process.
Okay. So you're taking a concept that can hurt aeroflight and using it to help it from a different perspective.
Correct. Because of ovalization. No, remember, this ovalization on the cylinder is not ovalization. I mean, yes, because you bend. But this time I'm using, remember, I have 4 ribs now, not 6. So when you force the opponent on 100 degree on 4 ribs, pressing in, you're forcing the knife to do this. And now you got this to play with.
Okay, I got you now. From the pressure, it's doing that from the pressure, not from the flight.
Correct.
All
the
right,
pressure now, because when you do pressure, the deformation of the nut cylinder into oval lets you play from 242 to 246.5.
I got you. So
Isn't
that's
that cool? And people say math is useless.
No, that's man. You're. This is about to turn into a 3-hour podcast. We start getting into that. So,
Now you understand, but then I want to finish 246 today, and I'll go to the front.
Absolutely. So,
now
you want to go to the. Okay,
now
so
we want to talk about the insert.
Okay, go
and
ahead.
I won't touch aero concept because I want to put in a different category.
No, aero concept. We're gonna do its own episodes on aero concept. Absolutely.
Very simple. When you put, say, 246, if you can make your insert exactly to fit the shaft on OD and ID and thickness, great. But that's not possible. Because as I say, the wall thickness and ID of every single brand, every single class is different.
You're saying it's impossible to make one size fits all when you're saying
but then if you have to, what do you do?
You make just the ID and don't worry so much about the OD, I would imagine.
You do both.
Oh.
What do you do? If you look at the fine art system I designed, that's where the fine art arrow insert A pattern comes in. Every single arrow fine art insert on the side of the lip that the arrow shaft sit on, have a 45-degree chamfer in it.
Yes, I did know that.
Why?
So regardless of if it's off by 1,000th or 2, it still seats perfectly. Concentricity.
First of all, I tell most people when you do this, use JB Weld. Don't use super glue gel. Second, when you force a cone into a funnel, it will always center.
Yes.
The moment you put a chamfering tool on the shaft and 45-degree chamfer on the shaft, when you put inside the knock on the neck, you will self-centered.
Right. Think about for those of you who are big into pistol shooting, think about beveled magazine receivers. When your magazine receiver is beveled, you don't have to get the magazine perfectly centered on the magazine well. As long as you get it close enough, it'll direct it right into the slot. So
now this is one mistake that a lot of people make, which you'll get. We'll talk about it in 204. When you put an insert, imagine your insert ID is 242.
Okay, insert.
Your insert OD, where the part that you glue the shaft, is 242. And your shaft is 246.
That's a problem.
You are guaranteed 4 thousandths back and forward.
Yes.
So if you put the insert glue it and leave it on the table, you're guaranteed 2,000, up to 2,000 right now, because 2,000 going to push to one side.
Right. Then it's going to settle. Gravity is going to take over. Which is
That's the
why we
reason.
build our arrows standing up.
That's the reason you want to put a fuel point onto your insert. You put the glue thing in, and you hold the arrow shaft, and you spin it. Now you force the glue to hydro flow around it.
That's incredible. I never heard. This is new. I've never heard this before.
No, that's what we're doing in order 166204. That's a must.
But not so important in the 246?
Yes, because 246 is reasonably, because after you do it, you are talking 2,000, and 2,000 on a 246 is a hundred. The percentage ratio is much smaller.
Right.
2/246 is 123rd, 123rd.
Right.
Compared to 204. Now you're in the real number that you're in, positive into the 1 to 2 or 3%. With this one, we're talking less than 1%.
Mm-hmm.
You feel math again. Less than 1%, you can deal with it. But the moment when you do 204 and you're off 4,000, now you're off by 2% on concentricity.
Just simply by going from a 246 to a 204 to a 166. Obviously you can't use a 246 component on a 166 arrow, obviously. But if it was possible to do it, everything else the same, just by going from a 246 to a 204 to a 166, you're increasing the difficulty of the build because the tolerances become that much more important.
Correct. Because see, think about it. 2,000 on a 246 is 123rd. Yep. 2,000 on a 204 is 1%.
Yeah. So quick numbers. We like to think they're simple, but we get it. But basically what we're saying is the thinner the shaft, the more important the tolerances are.
The more critical component concentricity process become.
Right. Because all right, let's make a visual, okay? If I have an arrow that is this thick, right, and it's moving, a little bit on the inside versus this thick and it's moving, the amount of space it's taking up relative to the amount of space that's available is a lot more.
And to make things worse, what's the shoulder on a 246? 1.5 millimeter. The shoulder on a 204 minimum is 10.05 millimeter.
Shoulder of the insert?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. And I learned that the hard way.
Let me ask you one question. What is the 204 from Easton's shoulder? It doesn't exist. That's why.
They don't have a shoulder at all?
No, the shaft is the shoulder.
Because of the HIT
insert.
Because of the HIT system. Okay.
Yes, now you understand.
Wow. Okay, so really Easton is a company that said, okay, this is working great. What can we make to improve it, or to make it look like we've improved it?
That's pushing the truth too much and exposing it.
But then again, that's anything. Like, think about, okay, so I had a Hoyt Ventum. Okay, then they came out with the Hoyt Ventum Pro. Then they came out with the Hoyt VTM, and now they have the newest. I forget what it's called, but it's the RX8 and the RX9, right? That's the AX50, whatever it's called. But at the end of the day, from the Ventum originally, if I'm not mistaken, had some issues with their cams. So when they went from the Ventum to the Ventum Pro, they went from the HBX to the HBX Pro cams. Everything else on the bow was practically the same. But they came out and they said, this is the new bow. This thing is great. You need it. It's the newest. You got to have it. I don't need to have it. It isn't that much better. So...
Let's don't go offline, man. I want to finish with the two.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Now you fully understand why I do a reverse taper on the insert.
Yeah, I love that.
Because even if you do not chamfer the shaft, the self-concentric of the reverse taper will give you that. Now, let me finish.
Yep.
And the shoulder is the bigger shaft, including a power driver extreme. That means the lip is always there. But if you use JB well, when you finish with, you lift it with a JB well, you form a chamfer right there.
That's awesome. So when you have a chamfer on the shaft and a reverse chamfer on the insert.
So when you put them together, it instantly locks. It's mating process.
So could you use one or the other, or do you have to use both?
You can use one or the other, but the reverse taper for the insert is the most important.
Gotcha.
Remember we talked about that in the early days about shaft movement? That is an oscillation, expansion, oscillation, expansion.
Yes, I do remember.
When you use reverse taper shaft on that insert, you prevented the oscillation expansion, circulation, oscillation, expansion. Totally. You eliminate it.
That's awesome.
And that means that is reason why an aero concept insert from Firenac with a reverse taper, you can shoot them the cinder blocks. The insert will not go inside the shaft because it's contained.
Yes.
In the reverse taper.
Yep, you'll see the knock fly out before you see the insert go in.
See, the math and physics is beautiful. The more we understand how to use it, isn't it?
So yeah, fun fact, I could not do chemistry to save my life. Growing up in school, I could not do chemistry for anything.
I mean, you know, that's the only subject that I do not have to study. Because I actually, for some stupid reason, just like doing CAT, I can see the molecular structure flying and see how they hook together.
That's amazing.
I've done that since day one.
That's amazing. I didn't have that, but when I went into physics and we started talking about Newton's laws of motion and all this stuff, I was like, this is just math.
It's easy. I remember when I learned graphite, the covalent bond. I mean, they just absolutely clicked with me. But you know, I died in physical chemistry.
Why is that?
I can't envision fourth-dimensional coordinate geometry.
Yeah, for thinking in 4 dimensions, I can't. I don't know that I could do that.
I remember my final exam on physical chemistry, 315. The first question: hydrogen molecule move 1 meter any direction. Calculate energy change. I was like,
all right, I quit. I quit.
That's the reason I also would take 316. No, I ended up taking 317. Because 317 is a physical chemistry without the calculus. I can do 3-dimensional, but freaking 4-dimensional in calculation.
No,
I can't handle it.
Yeah, that's my goodness. But okay, so 246.
Pretty much concluded on 246. Because see, on a 246, the insert and the knock, I actually introduced 2 very important concepts. The ovalization compression process in the knock to give you multiple sizes. And the reverse tapered on the insert.
And this is specifically from Firenac.
It's for every, from Firenac. But this will work on, that concept is getting more and more important as we move to different sizes.
Right. And again, we're going to continue to reiterate this. The faster your bow shoots, the more important it is to pay attention to this stuff.
Yes, because remember, this is the only thing that is stay in the air and pointing to where you want it to be.
Right.
I mean, just like you can do all day long with your barrels and your stuff like that until your bullets and your power all come together. When the bullet lifts the gun barrel, it is 100% on how the bullets behave.
Exactly. So if you're a speed demon, if you love speed in your arrows, it's awesome. I got no problem with it. From day to day, I might have a different opinion. One day I might want speed. The next day I might want a heavy hitting arrow.
Guy will shoot an expedition eccentric ST on a 342nd Framing Green arrow flying 355 feet per second. I do IBO 33 yard 1 pin on 12 rings.
That's incredible. You still shoot that bow?
I still that bow. That whole bow weighs 4 pounds 3 ounces. That's sight, rest, stabilizer mount, complete.
Titanium? Everything titanium?
Of course.
Do you before I ask this, is there anything else that we wanted to talk about with the 246?
No, I think that will be it. Because the next week I want to using this as a base. That's the reason today I spend so much time about insert and knock. Because the moment you understand these 2 parts, now we can move forward. Because this is the foundation of everything you build. Because now you're going to, the moment you talk about 204 or 3 or 315 or 380, because we're deviating from the most effective norm, now we have to think of other ways to compensate and address what we're going to face. Okay,
so we're now at roughly an hour and 10 minutes. And we decided to focus on the 246 because, like you said, it is standard. And everything that comes off of that, whether you're going into 300, 310, 330, 380, or going down to 204, 166, 130, or whatever, you're gaining something, but also giving something up
You're
in
not gaining
relation to the
anything.
246.
You are just simply losing.
So anything bigger or smaller than a 246, you're just giving something up.
Right. And in order to compensate, you have to pay a lot more for it.
All right. So then that leads me to one more question that we could probably use to pick up with in the next episode. In the very beginning, and even in the episode we did with Angelo when we first started this, we said, if you are a shooter and you are not shooting over 270 feet per second, go to the store, buy a gold tip hunter 300, go sight your bow in, and go have a good time.
Yes.
If deviating from 246 means you're giving something up, why is the 300 a better option than a 246 for someone in that situation?
Because you are shooting a high let-off bow. The 246 was built at a time where everybody is shooting under 260 feet per second, and the let-off is between 55 and 65, not even 70.
So everything that we talked about today so far, is that not considering let-off in the
Correct.
the situation? Okay.
That means if you buy a general bow today, in most cases it will be about 75% let-off comfortably. And then you do not require, just like one customer 8 days ago, which is last Monday, he come to me and say, Dorge, I really want to hunt. He said, just go ahead and ask your friends, see anybody got a single cam Matthew bow, buy it, and I'll tune it for you. And he go ahead and bought himself a Matthew LX for like $130, and he's going to spend $400 with me. With titanium, give 6 arrows, he walk out the door, and I'll guarantee you shoot deer.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm not making money with this. Seriously.
Yeah.
The titanium is going to cost me in labor. I'm going to spend 3 hours on it. So if I'm dropping my labor to $75 an hour, not at the time when I do consulting. It's in the thousands an hour.
Right.
So I'm just doing it to, first of all, it's retirement. Second, I'm really enjoying and teaching younger kids how to really hunt. Because if you screw around the equipment, you're not hunting. You're tinkering.
Yes.
Until you shot the deer and consider shoot the deer, because that is a whole, on top of science, is the deer behavior, hunting public land. I mean, yes, if you got the places, you can name every single deer. Great for you, but that's not a challenge. Yours truly hunt on public land where nobody know what deer is. I can't even put a camera there.
Honestly, man, sorry, go ahead.
But when you pull a 190-inch deer out of those places, you are somebody.
Right? No, I agree, and I can attest to that. My listeners know this year, being that I moved to a new state, I got away from the places that I've been hunting since I was a kid. No cameras. I'm not running any cameras. I didn't know I needed to get a doe tag at the time, so I'm out here with one buck tag, and it got so tough this year because I didn't have it in my head to attack it from the right perspective that it got so frustrating that I just went back to what I'm used to. I went to Jersey a couple times. I hunted mostly on my family property. But now going into next year, I know that it's going to be, I have to devote that much more. I can't say time. I do have a newborn on the way, so my time is going to be limited.
No,
but how I use that time has to be
this
better.
episode, we're going to discuss how do you harvest a deer going to a brand new place that you've never been and try to harvest deer within the first 2 days. That's the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to do that. I would love that.
Yeah, we want to put it after we talk about all the equipment. We'll talk about
it. Oh yeah. I think outside of this Aero series, I've really enjoyed sitting down with you week to week, and even before we have our episodes, we sit down, we bullshit a little bit. We talk like two buddies. I'm getting to know you. You're getting to know me. I've really enjoyed this entire process. So I'm gaining information, but I'm also gaining a friend, in a lack of a better way to put it. So
I would say so.
Awesome.
I mean, knowledge is key.
Yes.
Because just like I remember the day when I first learned electrical. Am I really going to do electrical? No. But when one day I absolutely need it, I don't have to bag. I'm able to handle it.
You could just do it. And I found that out here. Now, granted, I took woodshop all 4 years in high school. I've always liked woodworking. I've always liked building things and stuff. But when it comes to big projects that cost for me, a lot of money, the last thing I want to do is fuck it up, right? So, I've had the wood panels sitting in our house for 2 or 3 months now. I've had the trim sitting in our house for a month. I started painting this office in June, right? But it got to a point where I was so, I don't want to say nervous to try it out, but I didn't want to mess it up. But once somebody, this past weekend, my brother-in-law was here. He showed me how to do a couple things. The next day, I finished the whole entire room.
You need the basic knowledge, and right now I think this whole process, I give people an idea why things is what they are, which I don't think the archery industry have shared with the world.
I think there's a lot of, I don't want to say smoke and mirrors, because I feel like that is a pretty harsh saying. But what I do think is there's been a lot of, hey, take my word for it. I know what I'm talking about. And we as the consumer say, hey, they know what they're talking about. And that's fine, because we get one thing we like and we shoot it and we learn how to use it and we learn how it behaves and we work and we figure out a way to make it work. I think the problem is you have this person that says this thing and that person that says that thing and that person that says that thing. And each of them are true in their perspective. Not saying that, not saying anyone's trying to lie to anybody. But if I just take everybody's truth as my truth and say, hey, that works on his bow and those clothes, that camo pattern works in that patch of woods, well, maybe he's in a pine barrens and I'm in a hardwood forest, and maybe he's shooting 50-pound bow on 90% let off, and I'm shooting a 70-pound bow on 65% let off. So the big thing is we need to take everything into consideration. We need to take everything into perspective and make the choice that's best for you. With that, I think that's a great place to cut this time. I think we want to jump into 300 spine arrow, not spine, 300 ID arrows next time.
300 is going to be a long conversation, but not as long as 246 because we've got so much foundation material to cover.
Sure.
But 300 is going to be one of the more interesting.
Yep.
I mean, for anybody who was into crossbow, that's the episode you want.
That's awesome. So if you're a crossbow shooter, next episode, getting into 300 diameter arrows, that is the episode for you. With that being said, we want to thank you so much for joining us here for another episode of the Wing and Tail Boys and joining us for the 5th installment of the Arrow Science series. I'm getting a lot of information, a lot of knowledge out of this. I hope you guys are as well. With that being said, if there's anything else you want to hear us talk about, anything maybe that we didn't explain well enough for you, drop a comment down below, leave us a review, let us know what you think, ask us questions. Once we start really rolling with the series, we're hoping to get some questions in that we can answer as we go. Because if there's something that we find that we didn't explain well enough, we'd like to fix that before moving on to the next thing. Dorge, with that being said, any last second words?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, fantastic. As always, you can contact George on fireknock.com. You can contact me at wingandtailboys.chris@gmail.com. And until next week, remember, success is just a commitment away. Have a great week, guys.